Triple E EDC back again with another knife video. This is the Spyderco Military. This is the full-size Military, and we're going to do a little bit of a comparison between these two knives, the fluted titanium version and the carbon fiber titanium version. Both of these are probably the most sought-after militaries in existence, and as a result, I figured I'd go ahead and do a little comparison of these two, but in addition to doing a comparison, we'll do some size comparisons and talk a little bit about the good and the bad of this knife. Now, this has been around a while, so it's been reviewed many times, so I'm not going to go into exquisite detail with it, but we'll go into some quick size comparisons first, and then we'll talk about these knives. So, first of all, well, let's go ahead and keep this one up. So, this is the XM24, which is a large knife, and the XM18. So you can see this is bigger than both of those, and that XM24 is a very large knife. The Spyderco Para 3 and Para Military 2. Here is the Spyderco Shaman and the Spyderco Farid K2. Now this one is a massive knife, and you can see the blade is a little bit bigger than the Military, but the handle is actually a little bit shorter. And let's do one more. We'll do the Super Freak and the Benchmade Griptilian. Okay, so yeah, we're dealing with a big knife here, and so, you know, before we get into anything, number one, make sure it's legal in where you're at, and also make sure you're comfortable with a larger knife. If you don't like larger knives, or they make you a little bit uncomfortable, or feel like you're not in control of the knife, I've heard the complaint before that, you know, if the knife gets too big, you're not as in control. So Paramilitary 2 might be more suited to your style if you're like that. But let's go ahead and talk about the good and the bad of this knife. So the good right off the bat is the ergonomics on this. The ergonomics are great on this. Especially on this version, by the way. This version's contoured, and I'd have to put the ergonomics on this probably around a 9 out of 10, which is, this thing is great ergonomically. On this one, I'd probably say this one's closer to an 8 out of 10, just because the flat scales aren't contoured, but they both have excellent ergonomics as far as the profile goes. You have a good choke-up position on this up here, which is great. So you have a good choke-up, you know, good position back here. No real hot spots on the stock clip. On the Lynch clip, when you choke up, there's a little bit, because the Lynch clip is a deep carry, but really nothing bad. These both are Lynch clips, by the way. These are not stock, so just in case anyone was curious. As far as the next good thing is, on most of the models, you're going to find T8 hardware here. So this is T8 hardware. This one does have T6 hardware. I do think Spyderco made a mistake in doing that, but I assume the reason they did it was they wanted to accentuate the titanium and the pattern on the scales, and decided to go with smaller screws. That because they have the larger screws on the other model, I assume that's what was going on there. In addition, the blade shape is great on this. It's the same blade shape that's on the PM2 and the Para 3, and it's just a little bit larger. And so as much as everyone loves the blade shape on those, it's just great. It's a flat grind. It comes to a relatively, you know, the stock is decently thick, but it comes to a very, very, you know, tapered tip. So it's great for penetrating. It's great for as far as getting through, you know, lighter material. But we'll get to you know, the stock thickness at the end later. It's also great for slicing. This is a great slicing knife for a knife this size. Usually blades this size are much thicker. You know, let's take a look at the XM24, for example, right? So look towards the ends. This thing is much thicker. So one of the things is as far as a large EDC goes, so I don't mind carrying the XM24, but a lot of people do because of the weight and how thick it is. And, you know, frankly, this is a great alternative for people who want a larger knife like that, but don't necessarily like all the bulk. So that's another good thing. These are frame locks, both of these, Most of the militaries are liner locks. Now, I really, really love the frame locks on these, especially the, what do you call it, the lock bar stabilizer here, the lock bar insert here. So the lock bar insert here is great. It does its job, and it's also, you cannot see it on this side at all. It doesn't even show up, which most lock bar inserts, you see the hardware on the outside here. You really, instead you get to see the pattern. I think they did a great job with that. The actual screw for the lock bar insert is there, and I'm just very impressed with the way they designed that. It's the same thing on this one. The screw for the lock bar insert is there, and you don't see anything on the outside here. It's just a great design. The jimping they have on here, as far as on the lock bar, is perfect. It's not sharp or anything, and it allows you to get a good grip to open and close the knife very easily. These are both on phosphor bronze washers, and generally they do come that way. The action on them is superb, as you can see. It's hard because, you know, it's such a big knife, you got to get it under the camera, but just trust me when I tell you that, you know, that this one's drop shot, and this one, you know, I'm still breaking in a little bit, but it is very, very smooth, so quite nice. Next is, because this one actually hasn't been out of the box pretty much at all. This one's been in use and carried. But as far as the next thing on here, the finishes, so the finish on the titanium on both of these is great. This is going to be more of a sandblasted. This is going to be more of a, I don't want to say satin, but more of a, I guess a stone, almost like a stone wash, but not quite. I don't know what to call that. It's just basically a milled pattern in titanium, but the finish on it looks very good. Now, if you're wondering about this is peel ply carbon fiber. So, you know, a lot of people have questions about peel ply. So peel ply is basically just, they take the carbon fiber, they take a mold, and they peel the mold off, and it leaves a pattern with some texture on it. So that's all that is. This is milled in, and you see the micro milling here. It's so you have the larger milling here, and it comes back to a central location here where it's almost imperceivable. Same thing on the back. Just beautiful milling, right? So both of these knives are finished great. Now, the base models obviously come more like, you know, just G10 on this side, G10 on the other side, and some standoffs, but that's okay. Those still look pretty good, and they definitely are functional. So next thing is the sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Here, guys, it's getting late. Next thing is I just really like these knives overall, as the way they carry in the pocket. They are not as big in the pocket as you would think, because they are lighter. These are very light for knives these size. If you know how much a, you know, XM24 weighs, if you know how much, you know, some of the larger knives in this size range weigh, you know, here's a Hoback's next Buster, right? None of these knives are much heavier than these knives. These are much lighter. So what that means is these go in the pocket, and even though they take up, you know, a lot of room, it's straight down. It's not bulky at all, and they're light. So you don't really necessarily worry about them being there. So that's another great thing as well. Now let's talk about the bad. So the bad on these is the same bad that I have with the Paramilitary 2 and the Para 3. I do not enjoy the blade to handle ratio on these. You know, if you take a look, it's the same thing on here, but I'll do it on the military. Is, you know, here's your blade, right? And then if you move it here, so here's that's where it ends. You have this much extra handle that isn't accommodating a blade, basically. And that's because, well, it's really this, you know, that's how much extra handle you have. And, you know, it's part of the design, it is what it is, but it's one of the things I didn't necessarily love about the military, or the Paramilitary 2 or the Para 3, all of them. And it's one of the reasons that I tend to prefer, you know, like the Shaman, for instance, because even though this is suffering from a little bit of the same, right? it has, you just get up a little bit closer on the blade, and because of the width of it, it feels like you're getting more control over the entirety of the blade, and you're not, and the handle's not overwhelming. I don't know if that made much sense. Might have been rambling a little bit, but that's it. All right, next thing I don't like on these is, we're going to get into the dislikes now. Actually, we just were. Sorry, again, it's late. Next thing on this is the taper on this. So it does come down to a thin edge. So I do worry sometimes, you know, with something this size, you're going to be thinking, hey, this might be heavy use or hard use. Well, this is not really a hard use knife. It's called the Military, and yeah, the blade can probably stand up to a certain amount of exertion, but do not use this to pry. This will break. It is very thin from about here down, and you know, so just guys, don't use your knife to pry in general, but definitely don't use anything in the paramilitary, Para 3, paramilitary 2, military, anything in that series. Definitely don't do it. I mean, I see people do it with thicker knives, you know, a Endura, for example. Still not good to do it, especially with a knife that's that expensive, but at least the blades are a little thicker and can usually stand up to it. And you know, if you guys haven't, check out the review I did of the Benchmade Boost with the pry tip. You know, that's an option. If you really have to pry with your blade, that's an option. So anyway, next thing I don't like about this is there's a little nub right here. It's on both of these, so it sort of sticks out of the scales. I don't necessarily love that. You know, it is what it is, but it's just one of those things where it's like, well, couldn't they have just extended the scale a little bit to cover that? Probably not had any problems. It probably wouldn't have interfered with the ergonomics here. I mean, I assume that they did that because of the ergonomics. Now that I look at it, yeah, they did that because of the ergonomics, but I don't necessarily love that. It just, Anyway, next is the clip. So the clip on these I do not like. If you look closely in here, you see it has that 3-point clip with the hole in the middle, right? This is, again, is a Lynch clip. This is not their standard clip. But the standard clip has that, and then it just goes straight down. It's very similar. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar to this one. And I hate these clips. A lot of people like them, you know, because I guess especially people who use lanyards on their stuff. But I think most people would agree with me that these are not good clips. If you're gonna, they should get rid of the lanyard hole and just move on to the regular spoon clips that Spyderco does so well. So I'd like to see that. I'm talking about these clips, right? These are a little bit better. They still have a little bit of purchase on them, but they don't have that crazy, you know, weird look, especially on this one where the whole pattern is so large. You know, you're basically grabbing here. It basically goes up to here in your pocket is what's sticking out. So that's not great. Another thing is the tip down carry. So tip down carry on this is the only option. I know a lot of people don't like tip down carry. Now I don't mind tip down carry on this and I've done videos on this with the Socom Elite to show you guys, but there are certain knives, you know, when you take them out of your pocket, if you're doing, and there are guys who mod it to do their clips down here, but if you're pulling it out of the pocket here, look how far away I am from up here, right? I've got to walk my hands all the way up here to do it. Now, I will say that it's a drawback that it's tip down only because most people do prefer tip up, but in my personal opinion, I don't think it's a big deal at all, because frankly, if you pull it out of your pocket here and turn it around, right, now you're exactly where you need to be to Spidey flick it or open it or whatever you need to do. Again, if you're here, you've got to walk all the way up the knife. It's awkward. You could drop the knife if you need to get to it quickly, especially for a knife called the Military, where there's some implication of readiness. So that's all the bad. As far as pricing on this, pricing on these are like $195. I think there are some coated ones that are about $210, and then you know, every once in a while you have sprints come out, and the sprints on them are good prices. I believe the military was only slightly over $200 from Blade HQ when they did the Blade HQ JG10 and M4 version. So that's a great price. I mean, frankly, in general, the prices on these are great. For what you get in that price class, I think it's a great option. And the final conclusion is that this is a very recommendable knife. It's very close between the Shaman and the military for my favorite Spyderco knife. And between the two of these, I definitely prefer this. So, you know, it's just a great option. Now, I do want to go over a couple of differences between these two now that I've given you sort of the final conclusion on this, that it is a very recommendable knife. And if you're going to buy it, by the way, and you can afford the fluted titanium one, these are discontinued, but you can find them on the secondary market, you know, around $300. This is definitely worth $300, even with S30V. It is well worth it. It just, the fluted tie adds so much to this. Definitely recommend it. All right, let's talk about the differences between these two. So we talked earlier about the T8 Torx versus the T6 Torx. We also, one of the things we didn't cover over here is the stop pin. So the stop pin here is screwed in, and it's screwed in like a standoff, basically, right, on this version. On this version, it's a pin. Now, that's exactly how the military handles it on their base models, is it's a pin just like these, just like this one. Another thing is on the lock bar cutout. So the lock bar cutout right here, you'll see that because of the contouring, they contour this here, keep this flat, and then contour this here. So on this one, it's just all flat. So that's another difference just to be aware of as well. I think that's pretty much it on the differences. It's mostly the same. The standoffs probably are a little bit different size, it looks like, but other than that, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, guys. Again, final conclusion is I do recommend this knife. It is one of my favorite Spyderco knives, and it is a very, very close game as to whether I like this one or this one the best. This, you know, I would call it 1 and 1A. So very recommendable. And if you can get the fluted tie version, jump on it. Don't delay. Thanks so much.